I'd loved Claire for 12 years. And for the 6 years after her 21st birthday, she hated me with everything she had. Until the day a truck came barreling down the road, ending it all for her, and for us. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on her 21st birthday. This time, I decided to walk away. To free her. And to free myself. Ethan, you need to come over. Claire just had a huge fight with her parents at her birthday party. She's smashing things, my mother, Susie, blurted over the phone. The background was a mess of voices and clattering sounds. Then she hung up. I'd been reborn. Back to the very day Claire turned 21. We had been entangled for 12 years. And from this day forward, at least in the life I remembered, she would begin to hate me. But now, I had a chance. Nothing had started yet. I unlocked my phone and found the number of her first love, Marcus. Claire's at home, fighting with her parents. Go check on her. Only when the message sent did I finally exhale. And then, the memories from before came flooding back. Susie and Claire's mother, Laura, had been close friends. I was a year older than Claire, and we'd practically grown up together. In my last life, I'd gotten the same call from Susie, rushed over, and bumped into Claire just as she stormed out the door. She'd clearly been drinking, eyes red, voice loud, insisting I take her home. Once there, she asked me to stay a little longer. We had a few more drinks. The liquor that night was strong, neither of us lasted long before we both passed out. But the next day, rumors exploded. Word got around that I'd left with her from her birthday party and hadn't brought her back all night. Someone even posted a video on the campus forum, me holding her up, walking her into the elevator, taking her to my room, and never coming back out. Claire was the campus beauty. The post was deleted quickly enough, but gossip like that doesn't die just because you hit remove. Let's get engaged. Those were her exact words. I can still see her standing there in a long white dress, head bowed, hands clasped tightly together. Everyone knew I loved Claire. So, of course, we got engaged. Her agreement made me happier than I'd ever been. We were going to be married, we'd have countless days together. I would love her, protect her, and never let her feel sadness or cry again. Back then, I thought I was the luckiest man in the world. At our engagement party, Marcus walked in through the ballroom doors. And Claire's eyes, bright, unblinking, never once left him. After the party ended, I found her in the dressing room, wiping away tears. "Do you like Marcus?" I asked. "You got what you wanted. Can't I have someone I like?" Her voice was cold, her gaze accusing, as if I'd personally torn her away from Marcus. The truth was, I loved Claire, but I never forced her to marry me. And that night everyone gossiped about? Nothing had happened between us. "Claire," I said quietly, "if you don't want this, I'll talk to our parents. We can call it off. Don't pretend to be noble now. Just let your family set the date." She shot me one last sharp look, then walked away. From that moment on, she began 6 long years of hating me. The phone on the desk rang again, snapping me out of the memory. It was Susie. "I told you to come, so why did he show up instead?" Now Claire's left with him, and Laura's so furious she can barely stand. "Claire likes him," I said simply. "Of course she'd want to see him right now. But you've always liked her, haven't you? Feelings can't be forced. If I go now, it'll be to take Laura to the hospital, make sure she's okay." I hung up and headed for the door. This time, I hadn't gone to pull Claire away, which meant the disaster from my previous life wouldn't happen again. And even if it did, Marcus was the man she loved. Maybe that was better for both of them. It didn't take long to reach her house. Some guests were still there, murmuring their condolences to her father, Carl, and to Laura. I kept my expression neutral, helped see the last of them out, then took Laura to the nearest hospital. By the time I got her settled and finally made it home, it was past midnight. Rubbing my temples, I stepped into my bedroom, and my eyes landed on the photo album on the shelf. Even after all these years, just one glance was enough to pull me back. Every picture inside was of Claire. The first page held the very first photo of us together. I was 10 when I met her. We were standing under a cherry blossom tree, her smile wide and warm. I was brushing petals from her hair. Below the photo, in uneven pencil scrawl, was the date, the time, and the words, "I like you." I could still remember her reaction the day she saw this album. It was our second year of marriage. She wasn't as distant then. Sometimes we'd sit on the couch together and watch an old movie. Then she turned a page, and her eyes froze. "Ethan," she said, her tone sharp and disbelieving, "so all of this was planned from the very beginning. You're disgusting." She slammed the door so hard the walls shook, and just like that, our relationship plummeted back to rock bottom. What had I done? That photo was nothing but the pure affection of a 10-year-old boy for the girl he'd just met. What part of that could she possibly find disgusting? It wasn't until later that I learned the truth. Marcus had been poisoning her against me from the start. By the time I finally understood why she hated me, the window to explain had long closed. Or maybe it was never really open. She wouldn't have listened to a single word I said. I'd planned to ask for a divorce. But that was when Donovan Holdings' cash flow collapsed. Walking away then would have been nothing short of kicking her while she was down. I couldn't do that, and I couldn't leave Claire to face that crisis alone. So I stayed. I helped Donovan Holdings pull through. And afterward, I never brought up divorce again. Not that it mattered. She stopped coming home except to see our parents. We became strangers sharing a roof. The love I'd once dreamed of had withered into nothing more than a business alliance. I'd almost made my peace with it, told myself that in some warped way, we'd grow old together. Until Marcus came back into her life. A friend sent me a photo, Marcus brushing a stray lock of hair from her face, Claire tilting her head up at him, smiling. It was the exact same smile she'd worn the first day I met her. "Let's get divorced," I said. After 6 long years, I was exhausted. If Marcus was the man she wanted, then I would let her have him. At least one of us deserved to be happy. "What are you trying to pull now?" Her voice on the other end of the line was as cold as ever. Our companies had a new partnership in the works. She was probably worried I'd use the divorce as leverage to break the deal. "It won't affect the contract," I said. After a pause, I added, "Let's meet and talk in person." I didn't call my driver. I got in the car myself and headed for her office. But I never made it there. The truck came out of nowhere. I remember seeing a cluster of kids on the sidewalk. I didn't swerve. Metal crumpled. Glass shattered. And then, nothing. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was a message on my phone. "Thank you for looking after my parents." It was from Claire. I frowned. At this point in time, shouldn't she be with the man she loved? But I no longer cared to involve myself in whatever was going on between them. Another message popped up. "I'm thinking about starting a business. Want to join me?" It was from my friend, Ryan. I froze for a second before remembering, he'd asked me the same thing in my previous life. Back then, I'd been too busy deleting videos and quashing rumors. Soon after, the engagement with Claire consumed my time, and Ryan's proposal faded into nothing. This time, I typed back immediately. "I do. Let's start tomorrow." Huh. Clearly, Ryan hadn't been expecting that answer. "Before we launch anything, we've got to do some real market research," I told him. "We can't just sit around here and call it entrepreneurship." "You've got a point," he said. We tossed ideas back and forth for a while before I decided to pack. When I stood up, the photo album on my lap slid to the floor. I hesitated for only a moment before dropping it into the trash bin beside my desk. The next day, after telling my parents, I left town with Ryan for Riverton. Leaving wasn't just about starting a business, it was about putting distance between myself and Claire. In this life, I'd let everything with her end right here. That was enough. I wouldn't chase her, and I wouldn't waste another ounce of time or energy on her. Once in Riverton, it didn't take long for Ryan and me to spot an opportunity. With my memories of the last life, I knew exactly what would turn a profit now. "We've got everything lined up," Ryan said, scratching his head. "All we need is funding." I wondered if that meant going back to ask my parents for money. That's when his phone rang. "Claire's calling me," Ryan said, smirking. "Bet she's looking for you." He nudged me with his elbow as he answered. "If she asks, tell her you don't know where I am," I added. Ryan blinked but didn't question it. He brushed her off just as I'd asked. "You still like her, don't you?" he said after hanging up, his tone puzzled. "She's already got someone she loves," I replied. "Do I look like the kind of guy who'd break up a happy couple?" I clapped him on the shoulder. "I'm going to wash up." He didn't press further, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw his fingers flying over his screen like he was trying to set it on fire. I knew exactly what he was doing, spreading the juicy news. I could only shake my head and laugh. Maybe it was for the best. A good night's sleep was cut short at 7 in the morning when Ryan shook me awake. "Someone wants to invest in us." The investor turned out to be one of his classmates. We arranged to meet her at a coffee shop. "My dad wants me to start a business," Sophie said, sliding into the seat across from us. She wore jeans and a plain white tee, looking like she'd rolled out of bed and come straight here. "I'm afraid I can't handle it on my own, but you guys seem a lot more reliable." Sophie's father doted on her, not just with affection, but by grooming her as his heir. Judging by her tone, though, she didn't seem particularly eager to work. "Don't worry about a thing," Ryan said, grinning as he passed her a cup of tea. With Sophie on board, our funding problem was solved. "Ethan, that outfit's not going to cut it," Sophie announced later, eyeing me critically. She'd just spent half an hour helping Ryan pick out his clothes for an industry event we were attending that evening. Once satisfied with him, she turned her attention to me. I glanced in the mirror. Dark suit, neat tie, about as formal as it got. What's wrong with it? We're a team, remember? From the landing upstairs, she tossed something down. I caught it one-handed, a tie in the same color family as her dress. It wasn't like I had a reason to refuse our investor's request. I started readying my tie properly. By the time I was done, Sophie and Ryan had come down. He was in a white suit, also wearing a tie to match Sophie's dress. They actually looked well matched. The thought stayed in my head, unspoken. "Not bad," Ryan said, grinning as he stepped up beside me. "The three of us could pass for undercover agents right now." "You?" I snorted. "An agent? What?" "That's how it works in the movies." Watching him and Sophie bicker loosened something in me. I found myself smiling without realizing it. Life like this wasn't bad at all. Sophie might have been the investor, but she still came along for all our legwork. She was sharp, anything she didn't know, she picked up instantly, and often suggested ideas with real insight. No wonder her father trusted her to strike out on her own. With a mind like that, she could succeed at anything. This event was different from the usual. We were here under our own names, not tagging along behind our parents. The three of us were a little tense. What I didn't expect was to see Claire. After nearly 20 years of knowing her, I could recognize her from a distance. Only, the man beside her wasn't Marcus. Maybe she felt my gaze, because she turned. Her eyes lit up, the faintest flicker of surprise, or maybe delight. She released the arm she'd been holding, lifted the hem of her gown, and started walking toward me. In my last life, I was always the one walking toward her. When she was in a good mood, she might come to me first. When she wasn't, she'd offer nothing more than a faint nod to acknowledge my presence. Seeing her approach now with a smile in her eyes, that was rare. Claire stepped right up and reached for my arm. Instinctively, I shifted just enough to avoid her touch. Her face froze, like she hadn't expected me to pull away. When she looked at me again, her eyes were already rimmed red. "Hey, Claire." Sensing the faint tension in the air, Ryan stepped in with a friendly greeting. Claire didn't so much as glance at him. Her gaze stayed locked on me, just as direct as before. "Is there something you need?" I sighed inwardly. Not wanting the moment to turn any colder, I broke the silence. Hearing me speak seemed to snap her out of it. She took a small step back, putting a bit of space between us. "Will you come back and marry me?" The words hit like a slap, not just to me, but to Ryan, whose expression turned to stone beside me. What was she doing? In the last life, I'd wanted nothing more than to marry her, and she despised me for it. In this one, I'd stepped aside for the man she loved, and now she was asking me to marry her? "Don't you already have someone you like?" My voice was even, almost detached. And in that moment, I realized with some surprise that hearing her say the word marry stirred nothing in me. I really didn't love her anymore. "No," she murmured. Before I could reply, a familiar voice broke in. "Have you seen my brooch anywhere?" Sophie was heading toward us, gown in hand after chatting with a couple of acquaintances. Claire's face tightened as her gaze shifted from me to Sophie, and then to the tie I was wearing. "And who's this?" she asked. Sophie's bright smile landed squarely on Claire. "This is Claire," I said, turning slightly toward Sophie. "She's the daughter of my mother's close friend." Then I added, "And you went out without your brooch?" Sophie rolled her eyes at me, then reached a hand toward Claire. "Nice to meet you, Claire. I'm Sophie, their boss." "Oh, come on, do you even know what partner means?" Ryan cut in, earning himself a playful swing from Sophie. Only then did Claire glance at Ryan's tie. Something seemed to click in her mind, and she exhaled just the faintest bit of relief. What was that all about? Once Claire had walked off, Ryan and Sophie came over to me. "How should I know? And by the way, you weren't wearing a brooch at all today." "I figured you were tangled up in some romantic mess," Sophie said with a sly blink, "so I came over to bail you out." "Who knew you wouldn't play along?" "What romantic mess?" "Ethan's been into Claire for years," Ryan said, mock seriously counting on his fingers. Sophie snorted out a laugh. "All right, enough," I said, swatting Ryan's arm. "There's never been anything between me and Claire, and there never will be." Then I straightened my tone. "Don't forget why we're here. That's Mr. Thomas over there, my dad's friend. Let's go introduce ourselves." Sophie pointed him out, and Ryan and I walked over with her. When the banquet ended, Ryan and I had just dropped Sophie off when my phone rang. It was Susie. "Claire doesn't have anywhere to go tonight. Let her stay at your place. I know you don't want anything to do with her anymore, but I've watched her grow up. She's like a daughter to me," my mother sighed. "We'd grown up together. I might not love Claire anymore, but I couldn't just leave her stranded. Send me the address. I'll go get her." I'd blocked Claire's number long ago, and I wasn't about to unblock it for this. Ryan and I found her outside a hotel. She was still in her evening gown, arms wrapped around herself against the cold. When Ryan pulled up in front of her, she didn't seem to register it at first, frowning slightly. I got out and opened the door for her, just as I'd always done. "Why are you driving this car?" she said, a faint edge of complaint, and a trace of disdain, in her voice. Ryan, who'd been grinning as he handed her a blanket, froze mid-motion. His smile faded. In my last life, I'd never started a business, and Claire had always worn the image of someone willing to sacrifice everything for love. I'd never had the chance to realize she cared about things like this. She seemed to notice Ryan's expression. Her lips pressed together as if she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. "You were already at the hotel," I said. "Why are you coming to my place at all?" I glanced toward the hotel beside us. "Back then, we always went out together. You were always by my side. Now I'm staying at a hotel alone, and I'm a little scared." Claire reached out, tugged lightly at the corner of my jacket twice, her voice catching just enough to sound like she might cry. "Then why come here on your own?" "I came to find you." So Susie had told her where I was. "After you left, my father introduced me to someone, a date." That caught me off guard. Claire had always been pampered like a princess. The idea of her father arranging something for her was new. And suddenly, it clicked, why she'd wanted to marry me the moment she saw me today. I wasn't the man she loved, I was the shield she needed. "I used to like you," I said evenly, "but that doesn't mean I'm willing to marry someone who doesn't feel the same way." The memory of our last life was still sharp, the years of misery, the way we'd been at each other's throats. I wasn't about to walk into that all over again. "That's not true." "I do like you," she blurted, almost desperately. She didn't look like she was lying, which only made me more suspicious. In the last life, she'd adored that man so much she hated me for 6 years straight. How could she give in so quickly now? Not just give in, but chase me down to say she loved me? Unless, she'd been reborn too. "I saw the album you made for me, in the trash," she said, clearing her throat, as if she'd guessed what I was thinking. "So that was it." I let out a slow breath. "You know why it was in the trash," I said. She was pulling the blanket tighter around herself, but at my words her hands went still. Then the tears came, spilling over in heavy drops. I handed her a few tissues and adjusted the blanket over her shoulders. Some things are better said outright. Claire was still quietly sobbing beside me, and I stayed seated next to her. Scenes from my last life flickered through my mind. Claire coldly ordering me out of her bedroom. Claire screaming at me, demanding to know why I'd hit Marcus. Claire at our engagement party, never letting her gaze linger on me. Claire calling my name only when she needed something. Claire, as a little girl, saying she would marry me. Claire, the first time we met, standing under a cherry blossom tree, squinting against the sun as she smiled at me. All of it, the moments that proved I'd loved her for 18 years, and the memories of 6 years I could hardly bear to look back on. The streetlight poured through the car window in soft strips, and I couldn't clearly see her profile. But I knew she was still crying. "All right, stop crying, Claire." I paused for a moment before continuing. "Let's not torture each other this time." The car rolled to a stop. Ryan cleared his throat. "I'll just head out." "Find her a room for the night," I cut in. "Have someone take her home in the morning." Without waiting for a response, I stepped out of the car. I still had work to finish tonight, and tomorrow there were meetings to attend, suppliers to see. As for Claire, if she wanted to sneak around and see someone the way she had in our last life, she could. It had nothing to do with me anymore. Claire never came looking for me again. Now and then, Ryan would mention her in passing, how she'd gotten engaged to Marcus, how there'd been some kind of drama in between. But I didn't care anymore. The company was thriving, business was brisk, and while the pace kept me busy, it was a good kind of busy. Ryan and Sophie still bickered daily, but when it came to work, they moved in perfect sync. Watching the occasional spark pass between them, I started to get an idea. "You like Sophie, don't you?" I asked him over lunch while Sophie was off buying food. He froze, caught completely off guard, mumbling nonsense without managing to deny it. "Got it," I said. "I'll sound her out when I get the chance." That made his ears turn bright red, just in time for Sophie to walk back and notice. "Well, well. What guilty secret are you hiding? Your ears are on fire," she teased. Normally, Ryan could hold his own in any verbal sparring match, but now he just kept his head down and shoveled food in. When he didn't answer, Sophie leaned closer, intrigued. "What's going on with him?" "He's in love," I said. Ryan choked so hard he doubled over, coughing. Sophie jumped into action, passing him water, patting his back. Watching the two of them fuss over each other, I finally understood, these two didn't need me to play matchmaker. They were already each other's perfect kind of trouble. Half a year passed in a blink, and the company finally settled into a steady rhythm. We'd hit a few bumps along the way, but each one had been handled. At the celebration dinner, Ryan confessed to Sophie. The guy who always acted so carefree stood there clutching a massive bouquet, his voice trembling. Sophie accepted the flowers with a smile, then gave his shoulder a playful shove, just like she always did. And then they hugged. That was love, I thought. Love should look like this, mutual, easy, full of warmth. Not like in my last life, one-sided, exhausting, and sour enough to make you dread the sight of each other. Once the two of them officially became a couple, their focus shifted to me. "How about letting Sophie set you up with someone?" "Yeah, I've got a good friend, smart, gorgeous," Sophie added. When I didn't answer, Ryan dragged a chair over and sat right beside me. "I don't know the whole story with you and Claire," he said, "but people have to look forward." "That's right. You can't actually plan to grow old alone, can you?" Sophie chimed in. Watching the two of them tag-team me like that, something in me softened. I hadn't seriously thought about dating again, but seeing them together made me wonder if having someone might not be so bad after all. "All right," I said, clapping them both on the shoulder. "You two handle it." Everything in this life was different, and every day, I was happy. Until Claire appeared in front of me again. "Found her at the front door," Ryan explained, looking awkward. He'd gone downstairs to buy Sophie one of her favorite cakes and had spotted Claire being stopped at reception. I knew he couldn't just pretend not to know her, so I gave him a small nod. "It's fine." Relieved, he closed my office door and left. Only then did I look at her. She was wearing a white dress, shoes scuffed with a few dark stains. She seemed thinner than before. And when her eyes met mine, she straightened her back. "I'm sorry." It didn't take much to guess why she'd come. She must have finally realized the rift between us had been Marcus's doing all along. In my last life, right before I died, a secret part of me had hoped she might one day discover the truth, feel regret, or guilt. But in this life, I truly didn't care anymore. "Everything I did for you," I said, "I did because I wanted to. It's all in the past now." If an apology was owed, it wasn't to the man standing here, it was to the man from my last life, the one who'd already died. "It was all my fault," she whispered. Her hands trembled as she covered her face. "I realize now," she said, voice breaking, "I love you." The office door swung open. "I'm in the mood for pizza this afternoon." Her voice came before her face. "Emily. My girlfriend. Sophie's friend. Kind, sweet, sharp-witted. Most importantly, she loved me, and I loved her." We'd started dating 6 months after we met, falling into the easy rhythm of a normal couple, sharing meals, talking about our day. Because of her, I'd come to understand just how much strength a healthy relationship can give you. "All right," I said, smiling at her without even thinking. "I know a great place." "This is Claire," I told her, seeing Emily's gaze shift to the other woman. "She's my mom's friend's daughter. And this is my girlfriend, Emily," I added, stepping over to stand beside her. "Hi," Emily said warmly. "Want to join us for lunch? You must be tired after coming all this way." Claire blinked, glancing at me like she couldn't figure out how Emily knew she'd traveled far. I caught Emily's eye and couldn't help smiling. We both wore the same look of quiet, certain happiness. "Can I talk to Ethan alone for a moment?" Claire asked suddenly. I hadn't expected that, but there was nothing I felt I needed to hide from Emily. "Sure," Emily said with an easy smile, heading for the door. "I'll wait outside." When the door closed, Claire lifted her tear-streaked face to mine. "I love you, Ethan." The words broke apart in her throat. In our last life, she'd met me with coldness. In this one, it seemed there were always more tears. I sighed. "Don't you get it? You don't love me. You're just used to me being here for you, used to me loving you." "No," she said quickly, "I was wrong about you. I want to make things right now. Claire, I already have someone I care about. And I've learned how deeply a good relationship can make you happy. You should find that for yourself too. I hope you can be happy in this life." She didn't answer, only wept softly. I handed her a few tissues. "Do you want me to have someone drive you home?" Still nothing. "All right. Rest here for a bit, someone will come for you soon. Goodbye, Claire." I pulled open my office door and saw Emily sitting in Sophie's office across the hall. When I stepped into the doorway, Ryan was in there too, splitting a small cake with her. The setting sun had painted a golden stripe across the floor, and if I walked along it, I could take Emily's hand. Emily, to me, was delicate and luminous, a clever, graceful girl who noticed details others missed. As the light fell across her face, I reached out and took her hand. She turned to look at me. "How was your talk with her?" "Not much to say," I replied lightly. "All that's in the past now." Still, unbidden, memories flickered through my mind. Those old moments were vivid for a heartbeat, then dissolved like smoke in the wind. The sun sank lower, and a breeze swept through. Back at the office, the night guard told me a handsome man had come to pick Claire up. I nodded. No need to ask, of course it was Marcus. He'd been the thorn between me and Claire, the sharp edge that split us apart. The reason the little girl who used to chase after me ended up hating me for 6 long years. I don't know if, on the day I died in that other life, she'd shed even a single tear for me. I drifted in that thought for a moment before sitting at my desk again. A last-minute task had come in, a project proposal. The client had already liked our first draft, and if we could close this deal, it would push the company to another level. I was deep into the work when my phone rang. The caller ID read Claire. By now, she should have reached wherever she was headed. I answered, and her voice came through, tight, shaky. I could feel her emotions, the heaviness in her tone. But I couldn't offer her comfort. "You've arrived?" I cut in. "I have," she said slowly. "Marcus and I are engaged. He came to pick me up, to take me to his home." "Congratulations," I said. Silence fell between us. After nearly a full minute, I heard quiet sobs on the other end. She was crying hard. But she and we'd been parallel lines for a long time now. And maybe, in this life, we'd never meet again. I ended the call and immediately blocked Claire's number again. It wasn't just to avoid unnecessary contact between us, it was also out of respect for Emily. In my last life, I'd endured a marriage that was anything but healthy. I knew too well the kind of pain that comes from being trapped in something so lopsided. I wasn't about to bring even a trace of that unfairness into my relationship with Emily. By the time I finished the proposal, it was past 3 in the morning. I stretched, muscles aching, and headed home. I'd built a life for myself here in Riverton. My career had taken root, and my heart finally felt settled. I'd bought my own house, a big place, and shared it with 2 cats, Oliver, the older brother, and Daisy, his little sister. They'd grown up here. Sometimes they'd wrestle and chase each other around the rooms, but most of the time, they were inseparable in the best way. It made me think of how Claire and I had been as kids, most of our moments light and happy, until being together turned her love into 6 full years of resentment. Things with Emily were nothing like that. We were easy with each other, steady. I warmed a glass of milk, drank it slowly, and set the mug down. Oliver and Daisy trotted over, rubbing against my arm in greeting. After a quick wash-up, I sank into bed and was out within minutes. The next morning, the sharp trill of my phone woke me. Ryan's name was on the screen, and the urgency in his voice cut through my grogginess immediately. Something's wrong. I sat up fast. What happened? Our deal, the big one, it's been stolen. His tone was tight, breath quick. Stolen? My brow furrowed. We'd been working on that account for weeks. The proposal alone had been rewritten and refined countless times. Just last night, the client's lead contact had called, asking for a few final tweaks. I'd dropped Emily home, then gone straight back to the office to make those changes myself. I'd gone to bed thinking that, by the time I woke, the contract would be ours. It was a major project, split into 3 phases, worth $80 million in total. Landing it would have secured a third of our annual revenue target in one stroke. And now? Someone else had taken it. Take it slow, don't panic yet, I told Ryan. There was no point in rushing. Situations like this needed a clear head. He drew in a breath, steadied himself. I'm not sure about all the details yet. All I know is that a company called Morningstar Group swooped in and took our deal. I hear you, I said, keeping my voice even despite the weight settling in my chest. Dig into their background. I'll be at the office shortly, and we'll talk face to face. We'd poured nearly 2 months of work into this contract, every late night and revision a mark of how much we wanted it. And now? Just, gone. No one could take that lightly. All right, Ryan agreed. I got up, dressed, and headed straight for the office. Morningstar Group? I muttered under my breath on the drive. Could this have something to do with Claire? When I walked in, Ryan and Sophie were already there, along with several members of the core management team. You're here, Ryan said, giving me a quick nod. Sophie greeted me the same way, though her furrowed brow said plenty about the seriousness of the situation. Other employees glanced over, sensing the tension. I didn't want this mess to bleed into their work. Let's take this to the conference room. Inside, everyone turned their attention to me. The mood was heavy, the air felt close. Ryan, never one to dance around a point, stood. Boss, the president of Morningstar Group is Marcus. Yeah, that Marcus. Claire's fiancé. He stopped there, lips pressing together like he was holding something back. I knew what he wasn't saying, that Claire's connection might be part of this. He didn't want to insult me by saying it outright. Go on, I said, motioning for him to finish. Ryan hesitated before speaking again. Do you think Claire could be involved? She's been showing up at our office a lot lately. I doubt it, I replied. She and I haven't had much contact. This contract was strictly internal, only our own people knew about it. I've never discussed it outside, and certainly not with Claire. As I laid out the facts, a few faces in the room shifted, the implications setting in. Still, Ryan muttered, Marcus is a piece of work. He glanced at me, seemed to think better of what he was about to add, and stopped. I'm sorry, he said instead. I just can't stand people who play that kind of dirty. I nodded. I get it. Marcus had never left me with a good impression. What Ryan said might have sounded blunt, but it wasn't far from the truth. In my last life, he'd used underhanded tricks to pull Claire away from me. Now, in this life, he'd come to steal my business. Sometimes, I even wondered if the accident that killed me last time had been orchestrated by him. Sophie suddenly rolled her eyes at Ryan. If you can't speak without making things worse, then don't. What we need to do now is figure out our next move. Over the past year, Sophie had weathered enough storms to become a sharp, decisive professional. Faced with her scolding, Ryan backed down without a fight. The rest of the core team kept their heads lowered, silent. The problem wasn't that we'd mishandled the negotiations. Up until now, everything with the client company had been progressing smoothly. After a long moment of quiet, I said, "All right, everyone else, get back to your work." They rose one by one and left the room. My gaze fell on Sophie and Ryan. The three of us had built this company together, each of us pouring in time, energy, and no small share of personal sacrifice. Whatever success we had today, it was tied to our combined effort. Now Ryan and Sophie had each other, and everything had seemed to be moving toward a brighter future, until this. I turned to Sophie. "You and Ryan dig into the details of this order. See if there's been any leak from inside our company. And find out everything you can about Morningstar Group. I'm going to speak with our client's lead, Mr. Astor." "Got it," Sophie said. "Leave it to us," Ryan added. With their agreement, I didn't waste more time. I stepped out into the hall and pulled out my phone to call Astor. The call went through, but no one answered. It kept ringing, but he never hit the accept button. That left two possibilities: he was deliberately ignoring the call, or he was in a meeting and didn't have his phone with him. Given the circumstances, I was inclined to believe the first. He was avoiding me on purpose. Which meant there was probably little room left to salvage this deal. Still, I wasn't going to give up without at least trying. After weighing my options, I headed straight to Astor's company. The moment I stepped inside, the receptionist stopped me. "Who are you here to see?" she asked. "Mr. Astor," I answered honestly. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I admitted. "But I have something important to discuss with him." Her polite, practiced smile didn't waver. "I'm sorry, sir. Without an appointment, you'll need to schedule one and come back." Her words landed like a splash of cold water. It was hard not to feel the drop in my chest. Months of work, 2 months of back and forth, and now the entire deal was slipping away. This wasn't just my effort, it was the work of the entire team. Even if there was only a sliver of hope, I wasn't going to give up without trying. So I didn't leave. I waited outside the building for hours, from morning until I finally saw him, Astor, descending from upstairs in a sharp, tailored suit. He looked to be in his 40s, fit and well-kept, without the paunch so many in his position carried. The moment I spotted him, I closed the distance quickly. "Mr. Astor, can we talk for a moment?" His eyes landed on me, and the two men flanking him immediately stepped forward to block my way. I tried to edge past them, but they held their ground, until he spoke. "Let him through." At that, they stepped aside. I stopped in front of him. "Mr. Astor, did you get the proposal I sent you last night? Was there something you were unhappy with?" "Overall, there's nothing wrong with your proposal," he said, a trace of apology in his tone. "But this contract won't be going to you." "I'm sorry." "Then what's the reason?" I pressed. "That, I won't say. But it's not because your work was lacking." His gaze lingered on me for a moment. "I'm sorry. I have a dinner to attend, so I'll take my leave." He strode away, and I stood there for a few seconds, staring after him, my mind blank. When I finally snapped out of it, I knew there was no point staying. I turned and headed back to my own company. When I got back, I called Sophie and Ryan into a quick meeting. The agenda was simple. I laid out the situation plainly: first, that this deal was as good as lost. Second, that our proposal was still solid, and we should see if we could find a similar company to partner with. At the very least, we'd salvage the work and keep it from going to waste. Ryan nodded immediately. "Got it." Sophie didn't object either. "I'll get on it," she said before heading out. Once she was gone, Ryan turned to me, his expression unusually serious. I know why our deal got stolen. I glanced at him, curious. Why? I dug deeper into Marcus. His family doesn't have much money. The only reason he can even run that company is because Claire bankrolled it. I'm guessing this deal fell into his lap because of her connections. He stopped for a few seconds, watching me with a hesitant look. I raised a brow. Since when do you drag things out like this? Spit it out. Ryan shifted, then said, this still circles back to Claire. You think she might be doing this out of spite? You know, love turning into hate, trying to hit you where it hurts? I gave him a look. In my last life, Claire and I had been married. In this one, we weren't lovers, weren't even close. We'd reverted to nothing more than acquaintances. And that was fine by me. I had no desire to repeat old mistakes. But this life, Claire seemed to be the one trying to close the distance between us. That was what I couldn't understand. If she'd hated me in the last life, as she should have, why, in this one, was she suddenly reaching for me? Her purpose was a mystery. It's probably not her, I said at last. This sounds more like Marcus's handiwork. Claire had never cared much for business. She preferred doing what she liked, without worrying about profit or strategy. At the mention of Marcus, Ryan's expression hardened. If this is his doing, I'll go deal with that bastard right now. He was already halfway to the door before I stopped him. That won't solve anything. What we need now is to find another client. Ryan hesitated, then nodded. Fine. But this means our company's officially got bad blood with Marcus. I didn't disagree. We already did, honestly. The truth was, that grudge had started in the last life. Marcus had always been the same, vile, underhanded, and shameless. I was in my office, combing through resources and researching potential partners, hoping to find another company to replace the lost deal. At some point, my phone lit up on the desk. An unfamiliar number. Normally, I wouldn't bother with calls like that, they were usually spam. But this one kept ringing back. 3, 4 times in a row. Finally, I pressed accept. I didn't speak immediately, letting the silence stretch for a few seconds. Around the 3rd or 5th second, a low voice came through. Ethan? Yeah, that's me, I said evenly. This is Marcus. Glad to be speaking with you for the first time. His tone carried an edge, subtle, but unmistakably provocative. I froze for half a beat, then asked, what do you want? Nothing special, he replied casually. I just wanted to let you know I'm engaged to Claire now. She's my fiancée. I expect you to keep your distance from her. My brow tightened. It wasn't the request itself that irritated me. It was the way he said it, like an order, like a threat. Your business with her has nothing to do with me, I said coldly. I'm not interested in her, so you don't need to remind me. Good. Because if you don't listen, I'll make sure you understand what consequences really are. Consider what happened this time a warning. Next time, it won't be so simple. His voice dropped into something darker. You think stealing that order through underhanded means is something to be proud of? Doesn't matter. Winning is all that counts. I've said what I needed to. Do yourself a favor. And with that, he hung up. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the phone. The more I thought about it, the more certain I felt, my accident in the last life could very well have been his doing. Of course, right now I had no proof. It was all just suspicion. Even so, I made a decision. I called a contact to dig deeper into Marcus. Ryan's earlier investigation had been too superficial, I wanted a full background check. If Marcus was the kind of man who stopped at nothing, then Claire being tied to him was dangerous. For a moment, I considered warning her. Then I decided against it. That afternoon, Emily called to invite me to dinner. She said she was already waiting downstairs at the office. I told her I'd be right there. When I saw her, her long hair swayed in the breeze, the floral dress she wore catching the light, her face bright with a warm smile. Her skin was pale and smooth, her manner gentle. "I'm here," she called, waving. I jogged toward her. She laughed and said, "What do you feel like eating today?" "My treat." "If you're paying, I'll eat anything," I teased. At the restaurant, her smile never faded. Seeing her so cheerful, I couldn't help asking, "Something good happened today?" Seeing you makes me happy enough," she said, and the answer caught me off guard. It also left a warmth in my chest. After placing her order, she handed me the menu. "What about you?" I glanced down and realized everything she'd chosen was something I liked. So I added a few dishes I knew she enjoyed. "Seeing you makes me happy too," I said. She grinned. "Good. Ha. Oh, by the way, Sophie mentioned you've been dealing with some trouble. Need me to step in? I'm always ready to throw a punch if needed." She raised her small fist in mock challenge. I chuckled. "Not your turn to step in yet." Then my phone, lying on the table, began to ring. The caller ID showed another unfamiliar number. I figured it might be Marcus again and almost declined the call. But Emily tilted her head toward me. "Answer it," she urged. I glanced at her. She was resting her chin in her hand, curiosity plain in her eyes. After a brief pause, I accepted the call and hit the speakerphone. The last voice I expected to hear came through. "It's me. You blocked my number, so I had to use another one. Claire." My brow creased. "What is it?" Across the table, Emily made a little gesture, 2 fingers walking across her palm, as if to say she'd step away and give me privacy. I shook my head. "You don't need to go, Emily." On the line, Claire's voice sharpened. "She's there with you?" "Yes. I'm having dinner with Emily," I said evenly. I'd never hidden anything about my relationship with Emily, and I wasn't about to start now. I had no interest in returning to the kind of unhealthy relationship I'd once endured. Hearing my words, Emily smiled and greeted Claire without hesitation. "Hello, Claire." On the other end, Claire stayed silent for a good minute or two before finally speaking. "I called just to let you know, what happened with your company wasn't my doing. It was all Marcus." "I know," I said flatly. "If there's nothing else, I'm going to finish my dinner." Another stretch of silence, and then, "That's all. I'll hang up now." When the line went dead, Emily gave me a sideways look. "You were pretty cold just now." "To other women, sure," I said, holding her gaze. "But I'm always warm to you." That made her blush, and call me cheesy. After we finished eating, Emily leaned back in her chair. "If you ever need money, just tell me. I've got 100 million sitting in my account. If that's not enough, I'll ask my dad for more." I already knew her family was wealthy. With Sophie's background, it was no surprise her closest friend came from money as well. I didn't need her money right now, but hearing her say that still filled me with a quiet satisfaction. "Forget the money for now," I said. "But in a few days, could I visit your parents?" Her cheeks flushed instantly. "You want to meet my parents?" "What, you don't want me to?" "No, it's not that. I just wasn't ready for you to say that. I'll call them right now." The color in her face deepened, but she was already pulling out her phone. I started to tell her there was no rush, but she didn't give me the chance. She dialed her mother and said, "Mom, I have something important to tell you." Her mother's voice came over the line. "What is it?" "My boyfriend wants to come over and meet you and Dad," Emily said, flashing me a playful look. I suddenly found myself a little nervous. "Really? When?" Her mom sounded pleasantly surprised. Time to step up. Hello, I'm Ethan, I said politely. You're right there. She sounded even more amused. Yes, I replied. Emily and I are having dinner, and I mentioned visiting sometime soon. I was wondering when would be convenient for you. Anytime, even tomorrow, she said warmly. I've heard Sophie and Emily praise you so much. I'm curious to meet you. Her easy tone eased the tension in my chest. Great. Then I'll come by in the next couple of days, I said. Perfect. I'll prepare something with Emily's father. Just let us know before you arrive. Of course. Before hanging up, she added to her daughter, Emily, you make sure you don't bully him, understand? Got it, Mom, Emily said, sticking out her tongue at me, looking impossibly cute. They chatted a little longer before hanging up. Emily looked at me with a grin. See? My mom hasn't even met you yet, and she's already so warm toward you. Isn't that a good thing? I said with a smile. After dinner, we strolled around the neighborhood. Maybe she sensed I'd been under pressure lately, because she suddenly pulled me toward a nearby arcade. It was the kind of place we'd have gone to as kids, nostalgic, noisy, and perfect for unwinding. By the time I walked her home, it was close to 9:30 p.m. 3 days later, I found a new potential partner, one whose capabilities far outstripped those of our previous client. They told me if our proposal impressed them, they were willing to pay a 30% premium. That meant the original $80 million deal could climb past $100 million. When I broke the news to the team, the office buzzed with excitement. I threw myself into the work personally. After a week of revisions, tightening every detail, we finalized the proposal and signed the contract. We'd secured the order. Everyone was overjoyed, so I gave the entire company 2 days off, and a bonus. After the short break, we dove into the real grind. One afternoon, I got a call from the investigator I'd hired. He said the file was ready and had been sent over. I confirmed receipt, transferred the remaining payment, and opened the report. It was a complete background check on Marcus. As I read through it, my expression tightened. Marcus was a man who made a career out of climbing through women's connections. In the past, he'd drained multiple women of their money, one of whom had jumped into a river afterward. The list was long. He'd conned at least 10 women before. Now he was with Claire. Clearly, she was part of his next plan. For a moment, I considered warning her. But the words never left my mouth. About a month later, we completed the first phase of the new project. The client was impressed by both our efficiency and our quality. They told us once this project was finished, they wanted to hand all future orders to us. Hearing that, the whole team was thrilled, and so was I. About a week later, I got a call from someone I hadn't expected, Astor, the very man who had turned us down before. I hesitated for a few seconds before answering. Mr. Astor, to what do I owe the pleasure today? Well, this is embarrassing, he said, his tone sheepish. That order I gave to the other company? They completely botched it. Now I'm in a mess. I couldn't resist a jab. A man of your abilities? And you couldn't get it done? He sighed. Look, let's put that aside. I want to give the project back to you. Do me a new proposal, and I'll even give you a 10% premium. I thought about it briefly, then agreed. Money delivered to your door wasn't something you turned away unless you were a fool. I called an impromptu meeting with Sophie and Ryan. When Ryan heard the news, his face darkened. Now he wants to come crawling back. We shouldn't work with them at all. Sophie rolled her eyes at him. If there's money to be made, why not? She's right, I said. Everyone's been working hard, let's just push through and finish Astor's order quickly. The team agreed and filed out of the conference room to get to work. That same day, Marcus called me again, and the moment I picked up, he was already snarling, "What the hell do you think you're doing, stealing my order?" "Nothing personal," I replied. "Just skill against skill." "Fine. You just wait, I'll make you pay for this," he threatened before hanging up. I didn't realize how literal that threat would become until a few nights later. Driving home after work, a car suddenly swerved into my lane, aiming straight for me. I managed to jerk the wheel in time, narrowly avoiding the collision, but the message was clear. That close call convinced me, Marcus wasn't just manipulative, he was dangerous. After thinking it over, I sent the full dossier I'd gathered on Marcus to Claire. What she did with it was her business. But I was certain that, by now, she must have nothing but hatred for him. When I hit send, it felt like a weight slid off my shoulders. The company was thriving, everything running smoothly. I'd already met Emily's parents, and they'd taken to me right away, especially her mother, who was warm to the point of treating me like family. Before long, she was inviting me over every chance she got. After a few visits, she asked outright when Emily and I were going to get engaged. "Anytime," I told her. I shared the news with Susie soon after. She was genuinely happy for me, though I could sense a trace of regret that things had never worked out with Claire, someone she'd approved of since childhood. But once she met Emily, she warmed to her immediately and began urging me to make it official. With both families in agreement, and with Emily and I deeply in love, it felt like everything, timing, circumstance, and emotion, was perfectly aligned. We set the engagement for the following week. The day came, and it was lively and full of celebration. By the time the ceremony ended, I was exhausted. I went home to rest, only to wake the next morning to a headline, "Marcus." He'd been arrested for fraud and aggravated assault. The news reported he'd conned over a dozen women, and the public response was unanimous disgust, the kind reserved for people no one could excuse. Not long after, my phone rang. "Claire. Thank you for helping me," she said. "I didn't do it for you," I replied. "Call it helping myself." Marcus had always been vile. In my last life, I'd never been able to prove he'd had anything to do with my fatal accident, but too many details had pointed in his direction. And in this life, after the attempt to ram my car, I had no illusions, he was capable of anything. There was a pause on her end. "Regardless. I'm grateful. I knew Marcus wasn't a good man." I gave a quiet and then neither of us seemed to know what to say. After a stretch of silence, she said, "Congratulations on your engagement." "Thank you. I'm leaving for the UK soon," she continued, her voice unsteady. "I plan to study there. If things go well, I might never come back." Whatever we'd once been, it was firmly in the past now. We were strangers, for good. "I wish you all the best," I told her. "And I hope you find happiness." Then I hung up. A month later, Sophie and Ryan got married. Emily and I stood by their sides as maid of honor and best man. Watching them, I could see what real love looked like, two people who put each other first, who cherished each other openly. I felt a pang of envy, but also deep gratitude. I already had Emily, and that was more than enough. As I laced my fingers through hers and met her gaze, one thought settled firmly in my heart. I intended to be happy with her for the rest of my life.